Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay. So before we get going, just a couple notes. Obviously, we are into the three biggest weeks of the year with regard to the election. Election day, obviously 2 weeks from tomorrow. So this week, next week, leading up, and then obviously the week of the election as well. So as I noted on Friday, this is perhaps the most important time of the entire year for us. We've got to make sure that we continue to report all the news with the urgency and facts that we have around all of them, and continue to play error-free ball. Please remember to be conscious of everything that we are doing, reporting, and on social media. This is our time. Just in that vein, I want to make sure as we move forward with regard to the election that we are really paying much more attention to the road to 270 electoral votes, and looking at that rather than national polls, using the magic wall and John King and Harry Enton to tell the story of the road to 270, much more important than national polls. And keep looking at the states that matter and the states that are in play. And I do think that we should really amp up our coverage of that angle of the story. We should also do the same on the Senate side. We should not just be presidential. Let's be looking at the Senate race and the race for control of the Senate as well. Two other notes. COVID is clearly on a dramatic rise across the United States. There is no question that we are in a much more difficult time now, and we should call it what it is, but on the rise across the country. And in addition, I do not want in any way to tiptoe around Scott Atlas's role in the White House and with Donald Trump and what he is doing and what he is saying and what he is tweeting out. I think we should take a very strong point of view on all of that. I'll have other thoughts on a lot of this stuff, but I want to begin today with COVID and the rise in cases across the country. Matthew?
Thanks, Jeff. So in this final stretch before the election, it's an increasingly alarming picture. The top experts all saying we're entering perhaps the darkest phase of all of this. Over the course of 1 month, the new daily case average has risen 40% to over 56,000 a day. This morning, the world topped 40 million cases, over 8 million of them in the U.S., almost 220,000 deaths in the U.S. I'll note that yesterday, Sunday, recorded almost 50,000 cases, and 6 states didn't even report data yesterday. So that number is surely going to go much higher. Listen to the consistent message from some of the best-known experts. Michael Osterholm yesterday, the next 6 to 12 weeks are going to be the darkest of the entire pandemic. Scott Gottlieb saying we're entering the biggest wave. Fauci saying, I don't know where we are. It's impossible to say. Also revealing last night that he's absolutely not surprised that Trump got sick. Fauci and Azar this weekend talking a lot about pandemic fatigue as a culprit, but you can't discount that this feeling is being fueled at the top with Trump openly mocking listening to the scientists, Atlas's dangerous anti-mask tweet, and the White House task force as a group nowhere to be seen at this critical stage. Looking at the critical regions and trends and numbers on the CNN map, 27 states up week to week, 21 steady. Of course, they're steady after rising for weeks. I'll note that the U.S. positivity rate, which is the most leading of all indicators, has been rising all during October, many days closer to 6% than 5%. Arizona, where Trump holds 2 rallies today, is red on the CNN map, up 16% since last week. Tucson's mayor on New Day pleading with the president to comply with the mask order, says that mask order cut numbers by 75% at one point in his area. New Mexico and Washington, the highest week-to-week increases on the map. New Mexico's governor sounding the alarm over the weekend about a 101% increase in hospitalizations this month. In Utah, the numbers are now double the worst point of the summer peak, and there are also record hospitalizations. And the University of Utah Hospital telling the local paper that it was at more than 100% capacity over the weekend. We've got Martin Savage in Salt Lake City. Texas has the highest number of new cases this week. Austin's mayor telling New Day they're up about 50% on an average from a week ago in terms of hospital admissions. So hospital capacity, again, a major concern around the country. Same thing in Illinois, where the governor says death and hospitalizations rates are going up and tells State of the Union Trump is modeling bad behavior. And he sees bars and restaurants just ignoring the rules, filling places up as that state breaks one record after another. We've got Adrian Broadus in Chicago. Michigan's governor saying over the weekend that the court decision curbing her executive order authority created a lot of confusion, undermined a lot of the early progress. And then I'll note that Florida's case average is up 13% since its full-wide reopening in late September. The average has been rising for 10 days as we watch this as, of course, key South Florida counties begin early voting today. On the school front, Houston public schools return in person today. About 60% of families there opted for in-person. City of Atlanta schools postponing in-person learning until January. In surrounding Fulton County, schools just opened in person, but one high school already returned to online learning after 6 cases showing up in the first 2 days. And this Diana Goladriga piece that rolled out this morning on the so-called lost students, the alarming number of students who have not logged in for distance learning, many of them dealing with issues of poverty and housing and internet issues, enrollment dropping in places like Chicago and Dallas. On the health front, again, there continues to be some 11th hour optimism on treatments and vaccines. Azar saying over the weekend, we are so close, we are weeks away from monoclonal antibodies. Pfizer saying it's already manufactured hundreds of thousands of vaccine doses on contingency, of course, not approved yet. This new Elizabeth Cohen reporting this morning, a week after Johnson & Johnson's vaccine trial went on pause, the company and the FDA have not revealed critical details that they surely could have revealed by now. Was this from a live vaccine dose? Was it the first pause? What actually was the problem? Calls for more transparency here. Ahead today, Sanjay moderates the Fauci keynote remarks at the National Academy of Medicine. That's 11:30. And as Fauci talks about how surprised he is at the degree of the cardiovascular impact long-term from COVID. We will hear more about this when the American College of Cardiology releases some reports on impacts on the heart at 2 o'clock today. We've got Elizabeth and Jacqueline Howard through the day, Sanjay Gupta available, starting with the lead, and we've got the wrap piece today, which is Nick Watt for 4, 6, 8, and 10. And I'll leave it right there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's move, please, to politics and David Salian.
Good morning. As you noted, 15 days to go until Election Day. Clearly, strategic concerns inside the Trump campaign and the RNC about how to deploy resources in these closing days, what their best path to victory is. The finger pointing is well underway, laying the groundwork for what went wrong if indeed the president should lose. All of that happening as some Republicans continue to move away from the president, either by publicly musing about a possible Democratic wave or make clear that they haven't always been in line with Trump. The latest best example of this is John Cornyn, used to be the number 2 Republican in the United States Senate and is on the ballot this year in Texas. He made some strange comparison to it's like a woman getting married thinking that she could change her husband, but he went on to say Trump is never going to change and that he has disagreed with him and that he has made those disagreements to the president in private and dealt with them because he sees that when you do it publicly, things don't go so well. And yet he's doing it publicly now in the closing days of his campaign. For Donald Trump's part, he has two Arizona rallies today. Jeff, you talked about the battle for 270, and I probably obsess about this more than most, of course, and I can't stress how critical a state like Arizona is in the path to 270. When you see Joe Biden doing sort of better in that Rust Belt, Upper Midwest section, that so-called blue wall that Trump busted through last time, Trump, if he loses a state like Arizona that has been a reliably Republican state, except for one election in the last 70 years or so, it speaks to these larger demographic shifts we've seen across the Sun Belt and in America more broadly, but it also gets at the heart of Donald Trump's narrow path to reelection. And obviously, this state is one where Biden has had some serious strength throughout this entire cycle. So the president there in Arizona for two rallies today. This comes after his Nevada event last night when he mocked Biden for saying he'd follow the scientists. And that, of course, drew a swift rebuke from the Biden campaign in a statement last night saying that President Trump, quote, tanked the strong economy by not following the scientists as much as he should have. So there was some back and forth there. We don't see Joe Biden today. He's down in Delaware doing debate prep in advance of Thursday's second and final Trump-Biden debate. His running mate, Kamala Harris, is campaigning across the state in Florida as that state kicks off in-person early voting. And again, the numbers I'm sure Virginia will get into are just staggering about how many people have already voted there in critical battleground Florida. And again, nationally, just imagine that you're at home watching election night and you look at the bottom corner of the screen where it says estimated vote in. I mean, we're already approaching the sort of 20% mark of potential estimated total vote this cycle of people having already voted. It's just mind-boggling. You saw the campaign memo out from Jen O'Malley Dillon this weekend from the Biden campaign. She, the campaign manager, put out that note to folks saying, quote, "We need to campaign like we're trailing." This is her guard against complacency among Democrats who may feel that Biden has this in the bag, and their concern is that the energy then won't be there in the closing days. The concern may be more just about expectation setting and level setting, of course, in a memo like this, but clearly wanting to continue to pump the urgency into the ether as keep that energy alive all the way through these final 15 days. We've talked a lot on this call in the past about the financial discrepancy that we've seen between Biden camp and Trump camp, and now we had that reporting showing where some of those dollars are going to be spent for the Biden camp. In expensive NFL game advertising, you're going to see some Biden money spent there to get his campaign message in front of as many eyeballs as possible in these closing days. And I think that is where we start today.
I just want to highlight something David said about Trump's speech yesterday, where he said if Biden is elected, he'll listen to the scientists. We've been hitting this all morning, all night, and all morning. I don't think there's a better example of a soundbite and a banner that we should be using. And then as we turn to Virginia, I do think, as David pointed out, these early voting numbers are immense. I think it goes with the road to 270 and the magic wall. But 20% of everybody who voted in 2016 has already voted. It could be as much as half of everybody who's going to vote will have voted by Election Day. More than 27.1 million votes already, according to the CNN count. Just tremendous. So I think we've got to highlight that in a big way. Virginia, Washington?
Okay, so I'll get to voting in one second. Let me just clean up on COVID first. So obviously, David talking about the scientists and this whole Atlas tweet over the weekend, mask do what, mask work no, and Twitter's blocking him by saying he violated false and misleading statements. There is this Washington Post reporting out this morning about the task force and the meltdown there. Burke's confronting Pence about Atlas, saying she doesn't trust him and wanting him removed from the task force. had supposedly sort of said, both of you tell me what your stocks are and we'll discuss. And then just to note that there's some griping about Meadows and from Trump and how he has dealt with all of this. The Fauci interview about how it didn't surprise him that Trump got COVID when he saw this event where nobody was wearing a mask. And then the big other COVID piece of Washington right now is the stimulus package. Pelosi said that he needs that there needs to be an agreement by the close of business on Tuesday. Trump, for his part, saying he wants a bigger number than Pelosi, but no one seems to have told the Senate Republicans that, and they are clearly still a huge factor in all of this, with McConnell signaling that this isn't going to happen anytime soon. So on to those voting numbers you mentioned. So today, Florida starts, is added to the list among other states of early voting. 2.4 million people in Florida have already voted by mail. This is 261,000 shy of the entire of 2016. And in the national picture, more than 27 million people have already voted. This is a fifth of the total number of votes in 2016. And there are just these eye-popping numbers about Georgia up 152%, among others, just, with these long lines that we're seeing the pictures and these big numbers. Pam and Kristen also have some reporting about the Democrats and how they plan to handle Trump should he claim that these results are rigged, which will be part of their whips and raps today. I guess the only other thing that appeared today is this whole Russia interference story. So obviously we reported on Friday that the U.S. Intel community is collecting intelligence that these Rudy emails were tied to Russia disinformation. This obviously, as we learned this morning, that the reporter on the story for the New York Post refused to put his name on it over concerns over its credibility. So that story continues, and we're just watching for anything we can get out of that investigation. And I think that's what I got.
Okay. I just want to emphasize, I think that the numbers that you laid out for early voting and how many people have already voted by mail in Florida, it's just that these are astonishing numbers, and I think that this is a segment all to its own about what's going on with early voting as well. Let's open it up for thoughts on the election, politics, Washington, Trump, and COVID.
I have two things. One is that reliable or not, Radcliffe came out this morning and said that the Hunter Biden story is not being fueled, according to the intelligence community, by Russian disinformation. I don't know what we want to do with that, but it would seem inappropriate for us to say it is and not point that out. He did that on Fox Business this morning. So I don't know how you want to handle that, Virginia, but that's what he said. The other thing is on COVID, I would just make a suggestion if we have any of the Republicans or Trump administration or Trump campaign supporters or surrogates on who are not in favor of some sort of mask mandates. It seems to me from watching all of our interviews with people who are at these rallies that they don't understand that masks are not to protect them. It's to protect others. And because they always keep just talking about the fact that I'm healthy, I don't worry about getting it, it's God's will. And it's not about, still 6-7 months into this, there's still not an understanding by so many people that the masks are not to protect you, it's for you to protect others. And it's hard to conceptualize that because if you're asymptomatic, you don't think you're really causing any harm to anybody else. But as we know from the experts, that's exactly the case. And I just suggest that there be some more reporting and discussion about that because it still seems to be among whole sections of the audience, those who watch conservative media and maybe those who watch CNN, that that's what it's all about. And the CDC, and Ben can weigh in here, has said it's not really about protecting yourself. Masks don't really protect you. It's about you protecting the people you care about, or you're standing beside in a rally or in a voting line.
Okay.
Just on that, Cliff, I think we should note that you said that. That said, our reporting is that the intel community is looking into this. So,
right. So here's how we should handle that is the DC show should ask for Radcliffe as a guest today. He's willing to go on Fox Business with QAnon anchor Maria Bartiromo. If he's willing to come on CNN and have that conversation, great. So let's have the Washington shows ask for Radcliffe to come on. Anyone else? Other thoughts?
Speaking of Fox Business and Maria Bartiromo, is there like a news feature for media and how far around the bend she's gone? The stuff yesterday with Ron Johnson trying to turn this now into, is there, is he a pedophile? Hunter Biden, is there child porn on his computer, was just insane. And Ron Johnson went there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as Jake Tapper tweeted about, in fact. I think that's a good story for media to look at. I agree.
Hey, Jeff, I want to make another note about Trump's speech last night, and it may be the same speech he's giving at every one of these, although he ad-libs so much, it's hard to know if he's doing this all the time. But as we talk about the rise of COVID and how bad it is and how the numbers are going to the highest that they've been, over 70,000 cases and things like that, and the president's only references to COVID really in his speech are when he's either mocking Biden about the masks or talking about, hey, they say nobody's here is wearing masks, but everybody's got masks on. And of course, I did a great job shutting down travel from China, but very little reference to COVID otherwise, aside from those things. And as you noted, probably the most important line in the speech was Biden will listen to the scientists, which we've been talking about. But I think somebody should take a look at this. I believe the president talked for more than 10 minutes last night about dishwashers and water pressure in your toilets and your sinks and your showers, and especially about dishwashers. He probably said the word dishwasher 50 times, maybe more, talking about how he changed the regulation so that you could not have to run your dishwasher 10 times to get your dishes clean and not have to shower 14 times to wash your hair and not have to flush the toilet 15 times because of what he had done for you. And he literally went on, I believe, I would guess, over a 10-minute period talking about that. There were a few side tracks, but if somebody took a look at how long he talked about dishwashers and water pressure in your toilets as opposed to serious or even mocking reference to COVID and what to do about it, I got a feeling that he spent more time talking about dishwashers than he did about the virus. And, I mean, that's just extraordinary, right? I mean, it's, I was thinking about this. I listened to a lot of the speech. I heard most of it because Lara Trump yesterday saying that to Jake that when he was attacking Governor Whitmer, he was just having fun. And that really stuck with me. A lot of people obviously picked up on that, and we talked about that. Not really fun to be making fun of a death and kidnapping plot on the governor of Michigan and also Virginia. But I really think there's something there where this is literally where he is talking 10 minutes about dishwashers and water pressure at this time.
So I think this goes to the Republican angst about what they're saying in private, David, that he really has no message that he's spreading at these rallies. He's just talking about the things that Michael is talking about, mocking Biden, but he's presenting no real economic message. Scott Kennedy's talking about this morning. I think that's important.
Yeah, in that vein, Jeff, I do point back to the piece that Ryan Lizza wrote about that very thing, that while some of us may not have considered Trump to be a disciplined candidate in 2016, that in hindsight, he was very disciplined on his message on the economy, as you just said, on immigration, on defense, veterans, and very disciplined. I mean, again, there was scattershot around that, but he had a message that he was delivering that hit a core group of America who were frustrated with Washington in tough economic situations in the various, especially more rural areas of the country. And he was right on target to them. And Hillary Clinton totally missed that whole thing. And she didn't go to the Midwestern Rust Belt states and talk at all about the economy. She didn't go there, and she didn't talk about the economy enough and what she was going to do to help, the working class, if you will. And he hit right on that. And this time he's all over the place. And so there's no, as you said, no boring in economic message to the people. Hey, here's what we're going to do, and here's why I'm going to be the right person for you.
Other thoughts?
We've had some really strong reporting on poverty, and Bianna's education piece today was just so strong and so heartbreaking. And I know with Kyung reporting around sort of the lack of access to food that low-income and poverty-stricken families are facing. I mean, it's just something, I know we covered a little bit at the end of last week when the new studies came out about the numbers of Americans who are being added to poverty, because of the pandemic and because of the lack of the stimulus bill. I just think that we have to continue covering it and maybe package it in some way. I mean, it is just so strong, and it just shows why it's so important to get a stimulus, but more importantly, why it's important to get this pandemic under control. And so you see, what the Tucson mayor said this morning was so important. It's like people are sacrificing so much and are suffering so much to try to get us around the corner, and to have all of these rallies where there's complete disregard for the impact on other people, and especially the most poverty stricken of us all. I mean, it's really important to keep telling their stories.
Agreed. Other thoughts? Anybody else? Okay, the rest of domestic, please, Matthew.
Okay, just very quickly, the Michigan terror plot. We'll continue to suss out details here, just drawing your attention to this great Sarah Seidner piece that's run a couple of times, that just revealing all this chilling new evidence, the depths of preparation and the real danger that the Michigan governor was allegedly in here, the training videos, the text messages, photos, scenes of quick assault training and high-powered rifles and how to reload quickly, and a text message purportedly saying, just cap her when she opens the door. We'll stay on this and look for more. The record wildfires in Colorado, thousands forced from home, some of the worst fires in history, a new one over this weekend, the Calwood fire, destroying at least 26 homes, in addition to that 200,000 acre Cameron Peak fire that we've been following. And then the missing hiker, this 38-year-old mom found alive, missing for nearly 2 weeks. The Park Service getting a tip, finding Holly Cordier alive, dehydrated and malnourished, at the hospital, reunited with her family. We haven't heard a ton of details about how this went down, but Cordier and her daughter are both on Anderson Cooper Full Circle, and we believe their first interview tonight. And that's it.
Thank you, Matthew. International.
Hey, good morning. So we're all U.S. politics and COVID. Worldwide, cases of COVID passed the 40 million mark today, so that's our kickoff point. Italy used to be Europe's epicenter, and now in the second wave, they're seeing record-breaking case levels, but it is different now. The number of ICU patients is lower, and it's hitting the south versus the north. So Ben Wiedemann can explain all that. There were also new measures announced to contain the virus, and he's live on that. We've got Scott today looking at how there are currently more new COVID cases per million people in the Czech Republic than in any other major country in the world. Did they let their guard down too soon after the first wave was successfully contained by strict mask wearing? It appears so. Numbers now rocking up. So that's his package today. Downing Street and Manchester officials negotiating over the level of restrictions in that city. Locals are pushing back against strict measures because of economic concerns, even as there are reports they're running out of ICU beds there. Susama is live for us in Manchester. She can also weave in Wales announcing a new strict 2-week lockdown today. Nick Robertson is focusing more widely on all these tensions we're seeing between regional and central governments. What's happening in the UK is also happening in Spain, Germany, and other places, and he can get into that. Melissa Bell, live in Paris this morning as police officers enforce the new curfew in major French cities. We also learned this morning that Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat is in critical condition at a hospital in Jerusalem after testing positive a couple of weeks ago for COVID. He's one of the more well-known global figures to battle disease, so Oren has that reporting. Oren can also weave in how Israel is seeing improvement in numbers of cases since their lockdowns, and we'll have more reporting on that in coming days. And then just lastly, perhaps more evidence China continuing its rebound from COVID. Their GDP numbers showed growth in the third quarter. Just interesting because it's the only major economy to show growth so far. Are they an example of how you can rebound even after lockdowns and restrictions? So Selena can get into that, and that's where we start.
Thank you, Penny. Business.
Jeff, good morning. U.S. stock futures rising this morning after China says its GDP came back better than expected, as Penny mentioned. Also, China's economy is improving thanks to lockdowns. It's also buying more U.S. soybeans again, which is helping Trump shore up farmer votes, as Arcadia Labasco has reported this morning. Christine Romans and Julie Chatterley are tracking those developments. And of course, as Virginia mentioned, it's all about stimulus negotiations as millions remain unemployed, evicted, hungry, and impoverished. Trump saying yesterday he wanted a bigger package. McConnell being very clear that the caucus doesn't want a bill bigger than $500 billion. One analyst noting this morning that Trump's push for more stimulus is simply theater of the absurd. Mattingly and the Hill team are tracking all of that. And of course, misinformation and social media continue to abound over the weekend. Twitter removing a tweet from Scott Atlas seeking to undermine the importance of face masks, clearly a violation of the platform's COVID-19 policy on misinformation. Kate Bennett saying the move was welcomed by key members of the White House task force, including Dr. Birx. And this comes as White House Chief of Staff Meadows on Fox Business moments ago saying that Twitter and Facebook are working to intervene in the election. Brian Fung pointing out that election interference is quickly becoming a right-wing talking point. No matter how much bending backwards Zuckerberg has done to accommodate the right, it was always going to lead to conservatives trying to work the rest. Zuck seemingly, never really figured this out. And Brian is up and available on all of those threads. Brian is also tracking TikTok as it removes content promoting QAnon. And on QAnon, lastly, Donnie O'Sullivan is up and available around sound on how QAnon followers have hijacked the name of the real Save the Children charity to push baseless conspiracy theories about Biden and the Democrats. He is up and available on all those threads this morning, and that's where we begin.
Thank you very much. Anything else out of Washington?
No.
Okay. So anybody have anything they want to bring up before we move on to digital?
Hey, Jeff, it's Cynthia. I just want to bring up, when we talk about the soybean story, Argentina just did a huge sale to China as well. China continues its influence in Latin America. I want to bring up the Bolivia elections. It looks like the socialists have won. The party of Evo Morales, but not he. It will be Luis Arce, most likely to become the president. And not to miss that this weekend's huge protests in Chile are a big issue, continue to be a big issue in Latin America.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Digital.
Hey, we had 28.5 million uniques back on Friday and around 25 million on Saturday and Sunday. The most popular and engaging from the weekend is the legal reckoning awaiting Trump if he loses. Just terrific reporting from Kara Scannell and Erica Orden. That was one of our most popular pieces this weekend, and it's still doing well today. Another one on QAnon, about the man who went down the QAnon rabbit hole, and here's how he got out, from Bronte Lord and Risha May kicking business. It's just a great profile that hits both
the macro and the story of this man, or the micro, excuse me, and the story of this man, and then the macro on how QAnon preys on the vulnerable. And then the missing hiker found alive in Zion National Park. And the story that preceded that was just she was missing. So those were all good stories from the weekend that are still doing well today. This morning, number one is Collinson. Trump's campaigning stoops to new lows as COVID cases spike. That's 17,000 concurrent, so a strong Monday start. Democrats are hatching plans to counter Trump's attempts to cast doubt on election results. That's Abby Phillip, Pam Brown, and Jeremy Erb with 10,000 concurrent. Harry Enton's analysis on how and why Biden is putting so many red states in play. That was also a strong performer over the weekend, so it's in the top 5 this Monday morning. And Harry has just been doing really sharp weekend analysis, by the way. Another one that did well is why early voting trends can't tell you who will win. The 14-year-old girl who made a discovery that could lead to a cure for COVID and won a prize for that. And then the top videos this morning are John King breaking down the latest electoral college projections and the road to 270, and Fauci's comments on 60 Minutes. On COVID, our main bar is leading with the 10 states that have reported their highest single-day case count ever over the last week. And yes, just another endorsement for Biana Rodriguez's piece on the lost students of the pandemic. We will be giving that a lot of play around midday today. And then a good story from the international team about the Czech Republic. The masks made the Czech Republic the envy of Europe, and now they've flown it. We have a DLE up and going on the first day of early voting in many states, capturing the images and the moments and all of that. On stimulus, obviously we have the latest on the Pelosi 48-hour deadline, but the Mattingly state of play on the key differences that remain resolved, plus Tammy Luby on more and more Americans are falling into poverty. And then Richard mentioned Doni's work this weekend that's up now across all digital. I went to choose QAnon events, and here's what I found, including that separate on how Q has hijacked the Save the Children hashtag and, name. That pairs nicely with the story that I mentioned over the weekend that's still a really strong performer on the man who went down the QAnon rabbit hole. And we have a new interactive service piece publishing shortly on Is That Video Fake? Here are clues you need to watch for. All of that and more is in our Misinformation Watch blog. So we're packaging that all together and going strong on that. That's it. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. John.
Good morning, Jeff. So just the juxtaposition of the rising numbers, a more emboldened Fauci against how Trump continues to portray the pandemic, and what Dr. Atlas is saying. We won't watch for Fauci today at 11:30. He gives an address at the National Academy of Medicine. So we'll see what he says there. And then we have a couple of big studies coming out today at 11 o'clock this morning, looking at asymptomatic cases in nursing homes, and the 2 o'clock study on COVID's impact on the heart. Elizabeth Cohen stays on all the big medical threads. John Howard and Caitlin Collins from the White House on the Trump and Atlas angles. We have Josh Dawsey. He was one of the reporters on that really interesting article in the Washington Post about Brooks confronting Pence on Atlas. Dr. Larry Brilliant, Carlos Del Rio, and Caitlin Rivers to round out those discussions. We are hitting reporters across the country, Martin Savage in Salt Lake City, Adrian Broadus in Chicago, and New York City on the Hasidic wedding that was that they forced it to cancel because of way too many people. We have doctors from both Utah and Wisconsin, including the head of the University of Utah Health System. And John King also has Chris Murray, one of the modelers from the IHME, specifically to talk about masks and the importance of them. And then internationally, Ben Wiedemann in Italy, Salah Abdelaziz in United Kingdom, on the rising numbers in Europe, and we'll get into the China GDP storyline also. On the elections, all shows are handling just the massive early turnout. Rosa Flores specifically on the Florida angle, and then Kristen Holmes with a step back, looking at the fact that 27 million people have cast their ballot. Joe Johns out of Arizona, ahead of Trump's 3 o'clock rally. John King is going to do a magic wall hit during his show. on the path to 270, also doing a big breakdown of the Senate races. We had Rachel Bade from the Washington Post and Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report as part of that discussion. Lauren Fox and Manu Raju on the state of play with stimulus talks. And then finally, the Sarah Sider piece on the plot to kidnap Michigan's governor. We'll get that on again today as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Washington?
Morning. We've got Caitlin in both hours with a piece at 4, Arlette and MJ on Biden. And, of course, Pamela Brown's voting rights wrap is in the 3-day day. We'll hit Road to 270. We'll hit early voting. On COVID, Elizabeth Cohen, Nick Watt has our coronavirus wrap piece at 4. Sanjay, Ashish Jha, and Seema Yasmin as well across the hours. We're going to try to get international reporters in, and then also Congressman Francis Rooney in the 3 and Stu Stevens in the 4, both not the biggest Trump fans.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be following this dramatic new phase of COVID, what could be the darkest yet. The warnings from doctors on how bad things are getting, and these disturbing numbers all moving in the wrong direction. We'll watch the Fauci event that Sanjay's moderating at 11:30 on the heels of the 60 Minutes interview last night. We'll hit what's going on in the hotspots around the country. We'll look for the Elizabeth Cohen reporting on the Johnson & Johnson pause. And we'll get into all of that with our doctors. We have the Nick Watt wrap piece. We'll also get our international whips in. On the White House side of things, we'll get into all of the misinformation, the Scott Atlas tweet, Trump mocking Biden for saying, follow the scientists, Fauci saying he's not surprised Trump got sick, and all of the questions about what's going on behind the scenes of the task force. On politics, we'll be following the road to 270. We'll watch Trump this afternoon during the 3 o'clock and 6 p.m. Rallies in Arizona. We'll get into the significance of that state, and we'll be getting into these huge early voting numbers, more than 27 million already voting nationally. We'll get into that with the Pam Brown wrap piece, and David Chalian is going to join us to map it all out. We'll also get into the strategy, what's going on behind the scenes of the Trump campaign, the concerns about Trump's lack of messaging, and we are asking for Ratcliffe on the Russia disinformation stuff. And that's where we're starting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up?
Hey, Jeff, on the early voting stuff, obviously the numbers are a part of the story, but I still think that walking the lines and talking to people, I mean, the core of our democracy is right in front of us. America is available for us to talk to from both sides. You know, I mean, there's early voting going on for people who I'm sure are voting for Biden and I'm sure voting for Trump, but just with great enthusiasm and willingness to extend themselves to participate in what's the core of our entire process, democratic process. And it's just an opportunity for us to hear from people and talk to them and also see the visuals of these lines and hear about not only what they've had to go through to wait, whether it's a long time or not, or if they're voting at one of the NBA centers where it's actually relatively quick and things like that. That's also interesting, but also why they're there, why they're out early, and why it matters. And I just think we got to keep walking those lines and talking to people and putting together either live shots with elements or packages to hear from America.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, so just a quick recap. Obviously, we are 2 weeks from Election Day tomorrow, with COVID on the rise across the country, and the main person who Donald Trump is listening to in Scott Atlas completely unmasked himself as a complete fraud, and we need to point that out and call it out. Trump's comment that if Biden is elected, he'll listen to the scientists really sums the whole thing up. Let's make sure in the election coverage we are focusing on the road to 270 and the states that matter, the Senate races as well. The stimulus package story is obviously important, with Pelosi having set the deadline for tomorrow and Trump suggesting that he wants to go even bigger, although it's unclear how he can do that. And these early voting numbers, with Florida starting to vote today, and almost everybody, as many people who voted in 2016 have already voted in Florida. Just astronomical numbers, as Michael just pointed out. So there is a lot going on. Let's stay very newsy and very urgent, and play error-free ball. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.